We are back into Matthew, and one of the challenging parts about the way Matthew is written is we're really heading towards the Palm Sunday narrative, and then there's a lot of teaching, and then we get to Easter, and so we're going to kind of cover this, and we're going to kind of go back and forth a little bit in Matthew as we try to make sense of the next couple months and finish Matthew at Easter. But before that, we were watching a show. I'm not going to tell you what show because I don't know how people feel about things. But it was a good show. And like a lot of shows and movies now, and I don't know how long this has been around. Justin, what was the word we came up with for this? Cutscenes, where like the show is going, and then they go back, and 3 months ago this happened, and then they go, and then okay, a month ago. Years ago, Isaac and I watched this TV show, and they did that a lot. And one was like 5 seconds or something, or 1 second before. So they really had a lot of fun with that. I don't like that. Sometimes it feels lazy. Like we can't tell a story without having cutscenes. I don't like that. But I'm going to do it today. So, there you go. We're going to begin with the passage we're going to end with, and then we're going to go back, and then we're going to kind of go through it a little bit. But the story is turning towards Jerusalem. Okay? And as I've said in the past few messages on Matthew, things are heating up for him. And also his teaching, things become a little bit more serious, a little bit more decisive. It's kind of a yes or no situation. And so as we cover these passages, I want you to know that's what many of the toughest passages earlier in Matthew are really directed at the Pharisees specifically. And it's easy to see that and go, that's not for me. That is not a wise response, right? We need to make sure that we are available for God to speak through us. There's maybe a Pharisee in lots of us, right? And some of us kind of grew up in the faith, or were taught in a way where it was essentially very Pharisaical, very rough, very kind of punishment-oriented, very legalistic, and that kind of thing. So there might be a Pharisee in us. But let's always put ourselves into the story as we read this and cover this and try to understand what Jesus has for us. So let me begin with the end in mind. Matthew 21:18 through 22. In the morning he was returning to the city, he became hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and found nothing on it, but only leaves. And he said to it, "May no fruit ever come from you again." And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither at once?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith." Some of these things are themes we've talked about before, so we won't go quite as in depth. We covered them in previous messages, but there's some repetition in Matthew. That is a very Jewish way of communicating. If you read the Psalms, there's lots of Psalms and Proverbs that are basically repeats of the same line in a slightly different way. It helps us to learn. Much of Eastern education is that way. It's just repetition. Just memorize this, memorize this, memorize this, then on to the next, and you're supposed to learn it. That's how they do it. There aren't story problems, they're just memorization. So there's a lot of repetition in Jewish teaching. This is one of those passages that when you read it, you're kind of like, what is the deal here, Jesus? What's going on? Well, let me jump back, cut scene back to Matthew 20, and hopefully it will help us make sense of this passage we just read. And as they went out of Jericho, a great crowd followed him. And behold, there were 2 blind men sitting by the roadside. And when they heard that Jesus was passing by, they cried out, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." The crowd rebuked them, telling them to be silent, but they cried out all the more, "Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David." And stopping, Jesus called them and said, "What do you want me to do for you?" They said to him, "Lord, let our eyes be opened." And Jesus, in pity, touched their eyes, and immediately they recovered their sight and followed him. So where is he? Let me show the map, Justin. I think just the first one. There we go. So this has been a while. I'm going to do this. Thank you. Matthew, burn your retinas. He got this for me. So most of Jesus' ministry was in this yellow blob up here in Galilee. Capernaum is where he lived. He likely had a home, or at the very least crashed on Peter's couch. and much of what he did was in that area. Occasionally, Pharisees would come and confront him. Sometimes Pharisees would come all the way from Jerusalem. So they send the big ones, the scribes and the lawyers. Let's figure this guy out. We're hearing about him. We kind of don't like what we're hearing. He's getting too much attention for a good rabbi and saying things that make us sad. And so we're going to send and see how we feel and see if we can trip him up. So sometimes big guns would come from Jerusalem. But most of the work is in this area. Now he's in Jericho. So he's on his way to Jerusalem. So you see, I put these red lines in all by myself. Yeah, so I'm very proud of that. Those are not the first drafts of those red lines, by the way. So it's like nope. It's like, whoa. So it's hard. So they are on their way from Jericho. Is about 15 miles from Jerusalem. They're making their way to Jerusalem for the Passover. That's why they're going there. And there are stories of Jesus kind of like avoiding the disciples. He wants to go to Jerusalem. Jesus is like, well, I'm going to go, and they're going to kill you, like all that. The way John tells the story is he's decided he's going to go to Jerusalem. The Pharisees are mad because Lazarus has been raised from the dead, and they don't like that because it makes them look bad. So rather than rejoicing in this miracle that's happened, this life that's been delivered, and people that have been healed, they're upset about it. So Jesus wants to go to Jerusalem, and they're like, you can't do that. They're going to kill you. And he says, I'm going to go. And so Thomas, doubting Thomas, we say, who gets a bad rap, I think, says, well, let's go that we may die with him, right? So this is what is going on. Jesus is going to die. We'll talk about that more in a couple months as we get closer to Palm Sunday. So they're in Jericho, and a great crowd has followed him. So some of the crowd is likely people that have been following him for a while. There are the 12 disciples, and there's other disciples, people who are not part of the 12 but have connected. We know there's a group of women that really supported and funded his ministry. There's others that kind of come and go. None of them are probably with him full time, like day in and day out. But now they're following him. They're on their way to the Passover in Jerusalem. But thousands and thousands, hundreds of thousands of people maybe would go to Jerusalem. Some estimates are that it grew by 250,000 up to 1 million people for the Passover. It was very important to at least once go to Jerusalem for Passover, once in your life. So I think what's happened is on his way to Jericho and Jerusalem, he's picked up other disciples, more people that are on their way. And they're like, this is kind of a neat guy. I kind of like this guy. I like what he's saying. And maybe this is different. And this is a rabbi worth following. And so he's bringing this crowd with him. And as they leave Jericho, there's 2 blind men sitting by the road. This is the end of the beginning. And things are about to go down. And yet there's 2 blind men sitting there. I picture the scene. Maybe it's hot out. They're probably sitting out of town. Perhaps when they're in town or just outside the gate, there are local residents that harass them. You know, this is a good opportunity. Lots of people are on their way to Jerusalem. To go to Passover was very expensive. And so they're loaded with extra cash. So maybe think, hey, this is our chance to kind of collect some more money. So they're out there on the side of the road, probably sitting on a rug or a blanket. They're likely dirty. They're covered in the dust kicked up by wagons and donkeys and foot traffic. Most likely, these suffer verbal abuse at best and get totally ignored at worst. At the end of things, it's to be seen, to be known that we most crave. So I think it probably hurt the most when people didn't even acknowledge they were there. I imagine some people put a coin in the cup, and sometimes they might toss the money just to watch them crawl around as they can follow the sound of the money before it settles, right? This will be a fun game. Here's a coin, we'll watch and have a laugh. But why do I think that? Because people can be horrible, right? Even as they go to worship, we can be horrible. We're that dynamic. Our hearts are that complicated. There's this crowd. They're on their way to Jerusalem. They're caught up in the energy. But these blind guys are talking. They're making a scene. Collectively, the disciples try to shush these blind men. quiet, be quiet. Maybe Jesus had been talking and telling a story or explaining some kind of passage of Scripture in a way that they'd never heard before, and they just want to be with Jesus or enjoy the trip and don't want to be harassed or bothered or slowed down by two blind guys. But the blind guys seem to know something that others don't. Again, they likely would not have heard Jesus preach themselves before. They wouldn't have made it up to Capernaum, probably. So they've heard about Jesus second or third hand. There's this guy up there. He's doing some different things. He's saying some different things. And we all kind of collect stories or gravitate towards people kind of like us, right? Just kind of the way it is. If you ever, I've hosted a lot of training events and staff events in my years, and if you just have like a buffet and people go and you have ladies first and then the men first, you kind of have to do that because if you have the piranha go first, there'll be no food left, right? All the food is gone. If you look though, most often, most of the time, most people, women will be sitting with women, men will be sitting with women, and then sometimes there's a clear racial divide, right? There's a book from the early 2000s, Why Are All the Black Kids Sitting Together in the Cafeteria? We gravitate towards people that are like us. I think that there's a good chance that as these blind men are hearing stories of Jesus, as people are going back and forth, they're talking about this guy that's stirring things up north. The stories that stick to them are about Jesus and lepers, Jesus and children, Jesus and the Samaritan woman, Jesus and. These are the stories that stuck to them. Jesus was with people like me, spent time with people like me, helped people like me, saw people like me. They probably heard stories of Jesus dismissing the local and national religious leaders, choosing ne'er-do-wells for friends. Because remember, to be blind, the assumption may have been that you or your family, your parents, your grandparents had sinned. You were cursed. You were being punished, and so kind of icky. And so I want to steer clear of you. Another reason to perhaps toss your coins. I want to make sure God sees this, but I don't want to get too close. I think these stories of these kinds of people resonated with the blind men in ways they probably should with us as well. It says, behold. It could also be translated, and look. It's an invitation to see people through Jesus' eyes. They're not political or national eyes. They're not harsh or impatient eyes. They're the eyes who see us at our best and our worst. These are the eyes he wants to give us as we navigate our world. These blind men cry out. They are seen, so incredibly seen, and they explode in response, a loving and trusting response. Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. This is a big deal to say these things. How could they know? Just two blind men. We don't know how long they've been blind since birth, blind long enough to have missed out on things, certainly not able to travel and see for themselves, hear for themselves, and yet somehow they know this is the guy. Jesus has spent most of his ministry dodging labels like this. He spent most of his ministry saying it's about the Father, not about me. But now as things start to heat up, he's allowing the eyes to be drawn to him. Lord. It's a title indicating their submission to his authority and power. We know who you are. You are Lord. To call him Lord is to mean that there aren't others. It's an incredibly subversive thing to call Jesus Lord. You are Lord in place of any other political leader. You are Lord. You are the one we follow. You are the one to whom we submit. It's a radical thing to say this. It can cost you your life. Have mercy on us. It's a recognition that while mighty, Jesus' reign would be merciful, different. It's a very different kind of Lord. A Mediterranean Lord can do what they want to their subjects. This Lord is merciful. Somehow they know. They've heard the stories. Son of David is the old title for the future coming Messiah who would make things right. So in other words, they're saying, you are the one who has come to make it right, to fix it. Please help us. And he does. Jesus sees them in their pain, in their isolation, and he heals them. Jesus, who's on his way to do the biggest thing ever done, has time. Jesus lives out the Good Samaritan story, right? Good Samaritan is celebrated because all these great religious people pass by the wounded and beaten man, and the Samaritan, who is religiously other, gets it right. So perhaps maybe he's onto something that the righteous are not onto. Jesus lives that out. He's got something important to do, and yet he has time to see and to help. The next two scenes we'll talk about more deeply in March. They are the triumphal entry, Kenzie mentioned that, and the cleansing of the temple. Two just great stories of the Gospels where Jesus is coming to stir things up. Jesus does things intentionally, and he knows what they're going to mean. So now he's drawing attention to himself. He's fulfilling ancient prophecies. The king has come to take his place, but he is a very different kind of king. This sets a very different kind of standard for all Christian leaders, then and now. Sure, he comes and he draws a lot of attention to himself so he can die for his subjects. Christian leadership is hallmarked by sacrifice and mercy, not bravado. This is the triumphal entry. It's a different kind of triumphal entry. And then he goes to the temple, and Matthew's telling he goes to the temple. John puts it at the very beginning, I think just to set the stage for what Jesus was going to be like. In Matthew, it's here. Zeal for my Father's house will consume me. See, the religious establishment had made it difficult for Israel to fulfill its mission of being a light to the world, of bringing the message of God's love and design to all people. That was their purpose. The purpose of all of this is to give glory to God. Not for what we can receive, but what we can give back to him and how we can show him and make him look good. That is the purpose, and Israel had forgotten that. And here at the Passover, which is the celebration, the calendar was reset for Israel based on the Passover. This is the beginning. This is the thing around which you orient your lives, your identity. Who you are individually and corporately starts with the Passover. You were slaves and you were set free by me. This is the big one. And it's full of reminders of all that God had done for people that didn't deserve it. The Israelites were a difficult people. And so are we, right? And so the story is again and again retold of all the things God has done for us, undeserving people. And yet, somehow, the Passover celebration in Jerusalem had been about money and power instead of love and sacrifice. They forgot who had done all the providing and guiding. They made it about a small group of people instead of the world. This was unacceptable. And so this really unique scene, this stunning scene of Jesus, John again tells us that he actually fashioned a whip and drove people out. Things got intense. They got heated, right? Like, here's Jesus. He seems to be a nice guy. Just healed a couple of blind guys, and now, ow, literally, right? This is unacceptable. Talk more about those. Those are the two scenes between Jericho, the blind men, and this. He heals the blind men. He goes to the city, and then he leaves. And they're staying out. We know from the Gospels that during the Passover, they weren't staying in Jerusalem. They were staying outside of the city somewhere. And so sometime later, a day or two later, after all this, we come back to 21, Verses 18 and 22. In the morning, as he was returning to the city, he became hungry. And seeing a fig tree by the wayside, he went to it and found nothing on it but only leaves. And he said to it, "May no fruit ever come from you again." And the fig tree withered at once. When the disciples saw it, they marveled, saying, "How did the fig tree wither at once?" And Jesus answered them, "Truly I say to you, if you have faith and do not doubt, you will not only do what has been done to the fig tree, but even if you say to this mountain, 'Be taken up and thrown into the sea,' it will happen. And whatever you ask in prayer, you will receive if you have faith." Still, I read this story a couple times a year. And every time I read it, I'm like, what? What's going on? It just is so jarring. It's just some kind of weird holy temper tantrum, right? Jesus is like, I've just had enough. He just lost in the temple, and now he's just still simmering and takes it out on a plant, right? I mean, lots of us have angrily mowed the lawn, right? Like we're just I'm going to get it out somehow, right? Or raked, really angry. We can taste it when something is baked but not in love. Like you angry bake, like just doesn't taste quite good. Is that what's happening here? I don't know. This is about honesty, integrity, and reality, right? This is what this story is about. The fig tree normally bears fruit and leaves at the same time. So the leaves are supposed to be indication that the fruit is ready to eat. Instead, this tree looked ready when it wasn't. It looked like it was ready to nurture, to give life, but it wasn't. It couldn't. This is an indictment of the temple religion. It's the Passover, and people are coming from all over to celebrate. And Jerusalem has put its best foot forward and increased prices to capitalize on tourist dollars. It looks great, ready to nourish, but it can't. It's doing everything to make it very difficult for Gentiles to come to faith, to come to God. Spiritual life had moved away from sacrifices out of devotion to God and trust in His plan. It was supposed to be covenantal. In its place had come a contractual religion. If I do this, you must do that. We're going to make everything look good. The hope was for the restoration of a military and political power, a nation. But that isn't God's vision for us. The vision is of a global, quietly subversive people who bring peace to chaos, who help the culturally and religiously other, who see the blind man on the side of the road and the woman at the well and invite them to dinner. The fig tree is the people of God. They look good, but they've gotten it royally wrong. There's this bit about prayer, which we've heard similar things in the past few weeks as we go through Matthew. Is Jesus promising that you will get all you pray for? No, I don't think so. I don't think that's what this is about. And anyone in here that has prayed knows that, right? It's a painful reality and a confusing reality. One of my biggest lingering beefs with God is early on one of our kids was just sick and miserable. And they're little, they don't understand what's going on, and we didn't know how to help. And it wasn't dangerous, like we had to take them in, but just... And I remember praying, like, Lord, make me sick tenfold, but let this baby sleep. Like, I'll take it. Now, I'll admit, part of that was I was tired of the crying. So we never have pure motives, right? But I really meant it. And it didn't happen. And that doesn't make sense to me. And that's just a small example. Sickness passed. Baby was fine. We all have examples of that. It's a hard part of faith. We read these stories and it sounds like either Jesus is a liar or I don't have faith. That's why it's not happening. I think what Jesus is saying, when you, the church, fulfill my mission, I am with you. But when you don't, when you do the opposite, I am not. I will not be part of a church of the people of God who make it hard for people to come to God, who make it about them instead of Him. I will not be part of a church that does not see. So when you pray, Lord, help me to fulfill your mission, help me to see, help me to help, I'm a part of that. But when you pray, Lord, help me to look good in some way, I'm not saying all of our answered prayers are selfish. I'm not saying that. What I am saying is I don't think that this is about every single prayer. I think this is about the mission of the church. We are here to serve people, to draw people to Jesus, and I am a part of that. But to the degree that you are not doing that, I'm opposed to you, Jesus is saying. In other similar passages, Jesus says things like, an evil and adulterous generation, or, oh, faithless and twisted generation. That one was for his disciples who were trying to pray for someone to be healed, and it didn't work because they had gotten their faith wrong. They'd put their faith perhaps in themselves and something else. We have this long history. I just read this morning about the Israelites who Moses is getting the commandments and Aaron makes a golden calf. Somehow Aaron gets away with that unscathed. I don't get that. I don't understand that. But we have an ancient history of getting things really wrong. Jesus, in his mercy, is always trying to pull us back. Jesus is calling us to put our faith in him and to engage in redemptive work, healing work. The church looks best when its hands are dirty. How liberating is that? We can lay aside self-consciousness. We're called a peculiar people. How weird is it to help the dirty, the unseen, the forgotten, the cursed, the icky? We can lay aside self-consciousness. Sure, it's weird. It's the kind of stuff Jesus did. We can shake our fist at fear and then dare to move despite it all. We sing songs about fear, and some of it, sometimes we're singing it and I know we're lying, right? We feel fear. That's okay. Lord, I'm scared, but help me move. I think Jesus was scared. Lord, take this cup from me. He prayed, take this cup from me, but not my will, but yours. I don't want to do this. This is going to hurt, but I want to do what you want. We can move past fear and follow him. We can trust that we don't have to figure it all out. How liberating is that? We can know an eternal and eternally loving God is playing the long game. I do not understand why Jesus has not returned. This world has been a mess from the very beginning. I think it's one of the easiest criticisms of Christianity. Like Jesus and the disciples all thought he was going to come back in their lifetime. We've been waiting a long time. I do not know why. But I trust God more than I trust myself. And I see his love and his mercy and his wisdom playing out in pockets around the world and in my own life. And I trust that, and I trust that I don't have to figure it out. To be seen and to be given eyes to see, to not be alone, to be invited in to this great sacred mission based on trusting and loving Jesus, following him. And yes, we always want to do the best we can. We do that. The best we can is to be a place and a people that invite people and invite people to Jesus. Amber is going to come up and lead us in communion. Amber, if you want to come up. Communion is covenantal. It's a time to reposition and resubmit our hearts before the one who sees us, to cry out, Lord, have mercy on us, Son of David. So as she prepares to lead us, let's just take a moment to do that, to submit ourselves to Jesus, the Lord who is merciful and Lord, who wants us to see and invite us to see.